this video is brought to you by Zavi. More on them in a little bit.
Even the most avid cinephile misses a movie once in a while, but more than we'd like to imagine slip past us when we're preoccupied with that next big superhero thing and the streamer sci-fi series that everyone is talking about. And this is doubly so when it comes to horror, which has a direct-to-video quota unlike any other genre, and whose niche producers and distributors like Blumhouse, A24 and Spectrevision seem to put out new features at a terminal rate of knots. But let's talk intensity for a minute, because nobody wants their horror movie half-baked. No, for many of us, it's all or nothing, and only the most nail-biting, seat-gripping screamers will do. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 intense horror movies you probably haven't seen. Number 10, The House of the Devil. Before director Ty West struck gold with his 2022 slasher homage X, he wrote and directed an array of much smaller, lesser-known titles, the finest of which is undoubtedly The House of the Devil. A retro supernatural slasher set in the 1980s, which employs the best and worst tropes and techniques of the era to claustrophobic effect. The House of the Devil follows a college student, Samantha Hughes, to a babysitting job for an elderly woman in a gothic house. All the essential ingredients for a blood and scream stew. Under a lunar eclipse, Samantha faces sinister forces, fighting for her life against a Satanist plot. Laden with practical effects and gore, liberal use of handheld shaky cam and non-dolly zooms, the film is a callback to genre stylings that have long since been out of fashion. Though its budget was less than $1 million, the camera work, editing and broader stylistic toolbox lend every frame the distinctive feel of an even lower budget 70s 80s horror flick, inextricably tying it to cult classics like Black Christmas and The House on Sorority Row. Number 9, Battle Royale 2 Requiem. The hard-to-find sequel to the cult classic that inspired the Hunger Games trilogy, Battle Royale 2 Requiem picks up a few years after the original, where Battle Royale survivor Shuya Nanahara has gone on to form a rebel terrorist group called the Wild Seven. Their objective? Declaring war on adults. As if the first one wasn't wild enough, this installment begins with the Wild Seven raising a cluster of inner-city high-rises before a fresh group of high schoolers are recruited into a whole new game of bloody slaughter, with a few extra rules. Suited, booted, and electronic collared, the students are tasked with assassinating Shuya in his island hideout. Exploding necks, savage betrayals, and children-on-children violence ensues. Although designed as something of a social criticism of the USA's world police foreign policy in the wake of 9/11, Battle Royale 2 manages to be simultaneously too slapdash and contemplative to really see this through. It segues into something of a paramilitary actioner around the halfway mark and never quite recovers the intensity of its initial act. That director, Kinji Fukasaku, died during production may go somewhat towards explaining the odd shifts in tone. Number 8, The Endless. Filmmakers Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead star as brothers and otherworldly versions of themselves, Justin and Aaron Smith, who receive an ominous videotape and decide to return to Camp Arcadia, the backwards UFO death cult they fled years earlier. But the cult members do not seem to have aged at all in the intervening years, and a malevolent presence surrounds everything they do. Events only get stranger from there as the brothers encounter double moons rising in the sky, tug-of-wars with a rope tethered to the darkness itself, and a hallucinogenic red drug cultivated from plants that grow in the forest, which the cult call the Endless. Time distorts in unexpected and chilling ways, and the forest closes in on them, building events to fever pitch as the Ascension approaches. An extension of the world established in their self-contained super low-budget horror flick Resolution, the film capitalizes on its weird credentials in every way possible, making for a largely bloodless yet profoundly intense and unnerving horror. You may never have heard the names Benson and Moorhead before, but if there's one good reason to change that, it's the Endless. Number 7, Kill List. Directed by Ben Wheatley, who is perhaps best known for his recent adaptation of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, Kill List is the story of Jay, a British vet suffering with unresolved trauma from his last mission in Kyiv and untreated PTSD. After failing to secure anything approaching meaningful employment, Jay is enticed by the opportunity to work as a contract killer for a mysterious client, not understanding the problems this might bring to the surface. Signing his contract in blood, things quickly get out of hand, and as the body count rises and the tension ratchets up to breaking point, Jay attempts to abandon the job but is only drawn deeper into the machinations of a sacrificial cult. Homegrown on the streets of Sheffield, this is one of the very best British indie horrors that audiences have still somehow largely ignored.
Jumping in here to say that we are proud to be sponsored by Zavvi. Zavvi is the place for pop culture merchandise, including clothing, Blu-ray, steelbooks, collectibles, and everything in between. June 2022 sees the arrival of the mighty Stranger Things collection, hot off the back of the first half of Season 4, arguably the best season yet. Massive shout out to Eddie Munson. Zavvi are all about the best gear and limited edition items, like Royal Bobble's Zavvi exclusive 11 bobblehead. Limited to 1,000 pieces, this features 11 in her haptic suit, right after she learns how to become a superhero once again. At only $34.99, these are selling out fast. Zavvi is also where you'll find The Lowdown, Zavvi's free monthly magazine about all things pop culture. Packed with articles and features on film, TV, and gaming, they've also got exclusive interviews about the biggest titles and deep dives on beloved classics. This month, it's all about Miss Marvel, The Boys, and Jurassic World Dominion. Also, if you're a Zavvi Red Carpet member, you'll receive a bumper edition with exclusive artwork and even some special vouchers to use on the site. Use code CULTURE to get 20% off clothing and 10% off site-wide. The link is in the description below. So what are you waiting for? Go read The Lowdown, go check out Zavvi's awesome merchandise, love Stranger Things, and back to the video. I don't actually know how to get out of here.
Number 6. Revenge. Coralie Fagier's rape revenge picture, aptly and straightforwardly titled Revenge, may seem simple enough on the surface, but it packs an invariably gruesome and hallucinatory trip. Impaled on a tree and left for dead, the privileged socialite Jen must fight for her life against the elements and a trio of sleazy hunters hell-bent on covering up their crimes. Swiftly learning the harsh realities of a cruel world, she adapts to her surroundings in an effort to turn the tables on her pursuers and seek some kind of justice. With brutal kills, a hit of peyote, a self-branding scene, and a few grim nightmares just for good measure, the film is replete with visuals that marry Evil Dead, American Psycho, and hints of Nicholas Winding Refn overlaid on a dusky desert palette. Number 5. Color Out of Space. In this gory sci-fi body horror adapted from the work of H.P. Lovecraft, Nathan Gardner and his family are beset by an extraterrestrial substance best resembling the color purple, which infects their minds and bodies. Before you can say, ugh, their bucolic rural life is turned into a nightmare of blood, guts, and mutation, as animals and family members alike are fused together in horrific new combinations. And this entry in the rejuvenated Cage canon sits comfortably alongside Mum and Dad, Willy's Wonderland, and Mandy. While the sheer intensity at play in the destruction of Color Out of Space's characters, relationships, and setting might not be for everyone, the dark triumvirate of Stanley, Cage, and Lovecraft offers a worthy trial by fire. Number 4. Excision. A feature-length adaptation of the short film of the same name, Richard Bates Jr.'s Excision follows a social reject whose murderous psychosexual fantasies combine with her interest in medicine, building to a tense and visceral conclusion. Appropriately enough, Nip Tuck's Annalyn McCord stars as Pauline, the troubled teen with sex, surgery, and blood on the brain. Her dreams of mutilation often bring her to orgasm, and the only thing really keeping her tethered to reality is a genuine affection for her sister Grace, whose cystic fibrosis is slowly killing her. Excision excels as an anti-teen movie, taking the genre's tropes, the loser protagonist, the virginity quest, the mean girls, and putting them to work in something twisted and alien that in many ways far better represents the bullied teenage psyche. Number 3. Possessor. Our literal son of David, Brandon Cronenberg, has apparently been sent to pick up where his father left off in the 90s, and no film feels truer to that mission statement than Possessor. An indie sci-fi mind and body horror quite unlike any other, Possessor stars Andrea Riseborough as Tassia Voss, an elite assassin whose consciousness is implanted in other people's bodies, allowing her to execute high-profile targets without arousing suspicion. However, things go awry, as science fiction forays into other minds so often do, and she finds herself spliced into the body of one of her victims, where their psyches battle for control, folding Tassia in on herself. Though the film's release would not have been widespread, or at least not mainstream in the best of cases, its collision with the beginning of the global pandemic means Possessor has had even less attention over the last few years than it might have had otherwise, and certainly ought to have enjoyed. Number 2. Daniel Isn't Real. Adam Egypt Mortimer's future classic, Daniel Isn't Real, begins in suburbia and ends up in the visceral nightmares of Davids Cronenberg and Lynch. As a young kid, Luke Nightingale manifests imaginary friend Daniel to deal with his various traumas. Daniel serves as a companion who helps Luke through his parents' divorce until the fateful day he must be banished to the confines of Luke's dollhouse. As an adult struggling to cope with the pressures of an increasingly hectic and unstable life, Luke, played by Miles Robbins, son of Tim Robbins, opens the dollhouse seeking help, unleashing a fully grown, charismatic Daniel, played by Patrick Schwarzenegger, son of Arnie, into his life. Though the pair thrive at first, embarking upon an agenda of social and personal reconfiguration, Daniel's true nature begins to reveal itself, and Luke faces an otherworldly fight for his soul. Though part Cronenberg and Lynch, it is to David Fincher the film owes the bulk of its substance, putting a supernatural body horror spin on the Fight Club template. Loaded with suspense, paranoia, and psychological deviations, not a scene of screen time goes by without notching up the intensity. Number 1. The Sadness. Horrific Taiwan-set pandemic horror, The Sadness is a Shudder exclusive that made some big, nasty splashes at the international festivals last year. One of the first true post-pandemic horrors, The Sadness shows Taiwan succumbing to a viral pandemic that transforms its populace into evil, rapacious, bloodthirsty maniacs who want nothing more than to cause each other bloody pain and suffering. At the center of this is a young couple dodging infection and battling their way through the city to be reunited. With disturbing, over-the-top visuals from the outset, the film pulls no punches, offering a host of unpleasantries that even the Saw series would balk at. Bone saws, secateurs, barbed wire poles, you name it. While its low budget might be apparent in some of the mise-en-scène, its creative camera work goes a long way to glossing over this. In any case, the intense action and visuals don't overshadow its blunt force social commentary, critiquing not the pandemic itself, but many of the general public's responses to it, the underlying aggression of a restless society and their insistence on viewing everything through a digital lens prove to be many characters' downfall. And that concludes our list. If you can think of any we missed, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.